Hi, family. Welcome back to this week's episode of the Gold Corner. For those that don't know me, my name is Joel Ojeda, and I'm the creator of this channel. And this channel was created in memory of my 2-year-old daughter, Mia, who passed away in 2018 from neuroblastoma. She was diagnosed at the age of 2. She fought 10 months, and she was called home in July of 2018. And from there, God just put it in my heart to create this channel so our viewers, so people can see the reality of what childhood cancer is and what it's done to our children and what it's doing to these children. And this is a platform so we can speak about these warriors, these amazing real life superheroes, as I like to call them. This is the Gold Corner. Welcome, and let's do this.
And now it's time for the main event. This is the moment you have all been waiting for. In memory of Mia Ojeda. Dedicated to all the brave little warriors that have fought and the ones that are currently fighting childhood cancer. For the thousands watching around the world, fighting out of the Gold Corner, it's time!
So this week we have another beautiful, heartbreaking story, as I like to say. And I had the opportunity to follow Melis, who's our next guest, on social media. And just seeing pictures of her and pictures of her son, Warrior Justin, and everything that she's doing right now to be an advocate. I don't want to get too much into the story so she could share with us. So joining us this week from Clarksburg, Maryland, we have Melis Rosner. Melis, I wanted to welcome you to the Gold Corner. Thank you so much for agreeing to be here. I know your passion is the same as mine, and we spoke a little bit right now before the recording, and we just can't wait to hear Warrior Justin's story. So Melis, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Joel. I am happy to be here. Happy to be with you and with the Gold Corner. And yeah, our son Justin battled cancer. He had a type of cancer known as rhabdomyosarcoma. He had embryonal, so there's 2 types of rhabdo, and he was diagnosed with embryonal, stage 3. But I will tell you a little bit about Justin pre-cancer because, there was much more to him than cancer, as I feel like most of us cancer parents feel that our kids are obviously much more than the cancer that they battled. But Justin was born July 7th of 2016. He has an older sister, Casey. They're just shy of 2 years apart, so they were very, very close. And Justin was only about 15 months old when he was officially diagnosed, with stage 3 rhabdo. And essentially, he had a 12-centimeter mass behind his bladder, which came as quite a shock to my husband and I. Looking back, we certainly saw that he was in some discomfort. And, we raised concerns with his pediatrician, especially at his 15-month checkup. And I think that's sort of around the time we started to feel like, he was never one to complain, even as a baby. I mean, he was just a very, very easygoing, joyful, smiley little boy who loved to be around his sister, and he loved music, which I'll share a little bit more about later. But he started to, you could see signs like, when your child is just something's not right. You have a parent's instinct. There's something off. And anyhow, we ended up taking it upon ourselves to take him back to a specialist. It was a gastroenterologist that he had seen as a baby for bad reflux. And we just took him to get a little examination. And she is actually the one who really wanted us to, she ordered an MRI and she wanted him to get checked out further. She had kind of a feeling. So she was listening to us and really hearing us out. And honestly, we were waiting for the MRI to be approved by insurance. But he just got more and more uncomfortable and we couldn't wait. So we took him to the ER and he was admitted. And that was the fastest way, I hate to say it, the fastest way for him to get his MRI. And I just have to say, like, that first night in the hospital, I stayed with him. My husband came back home with our daughter. And I honestly felt like neither Justin or I slept very well that night. But I felt like he went to bed a baby and he woke up like a little boy. I mean, I can't explain, like, just, he looked so different to me the next day. And this is even before knowing anything. We were scared. We were, I had to face putting my baby under sedation the next day, which I just never would have imagined would be a possibility. You just don't think when you have children that they are going to go through anything like this. I mean, you just hope and pray for healthy children. And when they're born healthy, you're immensely grateful. And then something just happens like this out of nowhere with no warning, with no like genetic reasons or anything, just because it could happen to anybody. It just caught us so off guard. So I kept looking at him the next morning and thinking, oh my gosh, he just looks so different to me. And he had his MRI, which was painful, again, to have to watch them put him to sleep. And later that day, they told us that he had a 12-centimeter mass behind his bladder, the size of a grapefruit. I mean, this little boy had this huge mass, and my jaws dropped open. I'm like looking at the doctor telling me, and I'm like, this isn't true. Like, you must be looking at someone else's MRI, not my kid. So that began really the nightmare for us, because of course the next steps were a biopsy, and that was going to determine if this was cancer. And us cancer parents, anyone who's been in our shoes knows that biopsies take time to come back. They have to go to pathology, and what seems like forever. I mean, it's a matter of a few days normally, but it seems like a lifetime, just waiting and waiting and waiting. So meanwhile, watching your child be uncomfortable, not being able to fix it, trying to manage your other young child at home. It was just a lot. I don't know how we survived those days. I know a lot of times we look back and we think, what did we do? You do it, you obviously do anything you need to do for your child. But a lot of people ask, because we live in Maryland, how did we end up in Virginia? And so the GI specialist who Justin had seen as an infant and who we went back to, who helped us really find out what was the matter with him, she actually has privileges in Maryland and Virginia. And she was the one who recommended, if we were going to take him to the ER, to take him to Inova Fairfax, to their children's. She knew people there. She knew that she could assist us better. And she really just was an advocate for us. And thankfully, we did bring him there, because he had some of the best care. I mean, he had a great team. He ended up once he was diagnosed, he had a wonderful oncologist. We couldn't have asked for better care from the nursing staff, everybody, all the therapists. So he ended up, it was, days later where they did confirm that it was stage 3. I think because it was so large at that point and the location of it, it would be impossible to surgically remove. So it was determined he would begin treatment, chemo, immediately. So he had his port placed. He did have a port, and that's how he received all of his medication. Again, he was only 15 months old, just a baby. So it's like, again, going in, getting sedated. And, I was trying to count, my husband and I were talking the other day, and I was trying to count how many times Justin in the course of his life was sedated. And I lost track, but I counted at least 55 times. It was probably more, because every time he received radiation, which came later, he had to be sedated. And he received 28 rounds of proton radiation. So, just talking about it now makes me just really sad to think that any child could go through that. It's, you just don't want that. You don't want that for anybody, but you don't want that for children. They just have their whole lives ahead of them, and all they want to do is be here and be loved and be safe. And so it is hard to think back on, but these are the realities of what our kids with cancer go through. And it's really important that we talk about it, because these are the things that we don't know about. I mean, there's a term out there where it's, I wasn't a cancer parent until I was. And it's true, because prior to Justin's diagnosis, I knew very little about childhood cancer. I knew some things from just people I had known, not closely, but known, who had gone through it, but survived. And just I think people just have like a misconception of what it really is. And people are always shocked when I tell them the low funding that childhood cancer receives. When the Cancer Institute receives their funding from the government each year, historically, childhood cancer gets such like a low percentage. And I was not aware of that before being in the thick of this. And that is what we need to be talking about. So, when Justin was diagnosed, our whole world came crashing down. It was just it was so overwhelming. But we had high hopes. We had high hopes because we were told he had a 70% chance of surviving, which is a very, very, very good chance, given his stage of cancer. And we were hopeful. My husband and I, we were a good team. We said, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to just stay focused, and we're going to get through this. And Justin had his 43 weeks of treatment, and then including the 28 rounds of proton radiation therapy, which was actually in Baltimore. And some of his chemo overlapped with that. That was tricky, because we had to spend the morning with radiation in Baltimore and then go around the corner to a different hospital just for that time frame to get chemo, which was tough for Justin because he was used to certain nursing staff giving him his chemo at clinic. And so it was a little bit, it was rough. It was rough for him, but nonetheless, he powered through. He was such a warrior. Throughout his entire roadmap of treatment, I don't think Justin complained once. We were fortunate he didn't have any, he really didn't have any complications. We know families that really, really, really go through it. The kids have all kinds of complications, and it's a tough, tough, tough process on everybody. We were fortunate. I mean, he really weathered the storm fairly well, given the crap that they were putting in him. I mean, that chemo is very toxic, and it's awful to watch your kid go through that. So he was just such a warrior, and he was such a joy too, because throughout it all, we had to be careful, of course. You have to quarantine certain times. You have to just protect their immune system. It's so, so, so fragile. And so it was tough, because really his world only consisted of us and his sister, his family, his immediate family, maybe my dad, who was around, and then the clinic and hospital staff. I mean, that was his family. They became our family. We spent more time there than anywhere else. And it was hard. It was hard because you want your child to thrive and have a normal childhood and do all the normal things. And Justin couldn't. He did the best with what he had. We have a lot of really, really good memories. We have a lot of tough memories, but we have the good ones, and I'm thankful for that. And like I said, prior to diagnosis, Justin was just a very giggly, smiley, happy baby. And then even through treatment, he was a champion. I always say he taught me more than I could ever teach him in his short life. And so November, just to kind of give timeframes here, November of 2017 is when he was officially diagnosed, November 1st. And then, he started his treatment plan, and he was set to finish in August of 2018. And pretty much we were on schedule for the most part. There weren't many delays. We were fortunate with that. September of 2018 was when his post-treatment scans were scheduled. And we did schedule them. Prior to that, a couple weeks leading up to that, I sensed something was off. Again, you can just tell. And I started to have that horrible feeling inside of me, the same type of feeling I had when he was first diagnosed. And my husband and I just we knew, and we said something. We kept saying something to his oncologist and the team. And I think they were trying to reassure us, because he did so well in treatment. His tumor was shrinking. It was shrinking enough to the point where they were going to start considering surgery to remove it. And then September 11th actually is when he had his first set of scans. And even before I got the results, I knew the cancer was back. And so he officially relapsed. And he relapsed in areas that were treated, which was a clear sign that it's really aggressive. And when you relapse with rhabdo, there's less than 1% chance of survival. So immediately it was almost like, I honestly feel like the relapse for me was worse than the diagnosis by far, because at least when he was diagnosed, I had hope. And I had something, I didn't have anything to kind of like compare it to. I was it was all new. It was just uncharted territory. And now with the relapse, I just felt my world came crashing down even more. I just felt like, why is this happening? that really began the true nightmare, because from that point until he passed away, those were the toughest months for Justin physically. I mean, I saw my son go through horrendous pain. And it's horrible. It is truly, truly horrible, because you want to be able to prevent that, and you want to take it from them, and you obviously can't. But we were trying everything. We were doing everything we could. We said, okay, let's do a chemo we've never tried. You know, who knows? Let's look at, my husband and I were on the phone with doctors all over the country. We were reaching out to anybody and everybody, just have them take a look at his file, see if they would help us, see if there was anything at all. And nobody would touch him. Nobody would touch him. It was horrible. We came so close to having him transferred to Sloan Kettering, because that is the one place that was willing to talk to us based on his circumstance. But when it came down to it, they were honest with it. I have to give them credit. They were honest and say, you know, I don't know if we can do this. We can't guarantee that even if we remove the cells, that they won't grow back, and we can't guarantee he'll even survive the surgery. And I couldn't put him through that. I couldn't put him through not being able to survive. So we had a lot of heart-to-hearts, my husband and I. We prayed, and we just, you know, we tried everything we could, and we obviously did some alternative, we did, you know, medicinal marijuana to make him comfortable. I mean, he was so uncomfortable. And so that helped him a lot, and it helped him sleep, because he wasn't sleeping because of the discomfort, and he needed his strength. So once he did relapse, he just started kind of going downhill, and we did have to hospitalize him. So we spent 51 days inpatient trying different chemos. The first one did not work and made him completely sick. I mean, he was just vomiting all the time. He did, for the very first time in his treatment, have to get an NG tube, because he was not keeping anything in. And that, if anyone's experienced that, is in itself an adventure, especially with young children. And he had a couple of procedures done during that time too. He had a suprapubic catheter put in, like around his belly button, which, because at that point, the tumor was putting so much pressure on his kidneys and his bladder, he was not able to urinate. And so they had to provide some relief. So the suprapubic catheter's purpose was to do that. After some time, that was not working as well as it should have been working. So then we moved to actually putting tubes in directly to his kidneys to drain the kidneys. So he had that procedure in October, and he started to feel a little bit more relief. Meanwhile, you know, test after test and monitoring. And then one of the chemos, the next chemo that we tried, was actually helping. It was making him more comfortable. It was more tolerable. And I think it was able to stop the growth of the tumor temporarily. I mean, I think the way the doctor explained it, we knew that it wasn't going to be a permanent solution, but it was going to give him some relief so that he could have a little bit more quality of life. And that's what we were aiming for. We wanted him to have some good moments and not just be stuck in the hospital, like not able to do anything. I remember during those 51 days in the hospital, after 30 of them, we were able to get him outside. And I will never forget that day. It was just, even for 10 minutes, he was just breathing fresh air. He was just happy to be outside. It was a lot, but I could tell it made a huge difference. And those are the moments I think about. And then, we were grateful that we sort of bought some time in helping stop the growth of the tumor so that he could enjoy some things. So we left the hospital mid-November and brought him home. And the goal, again, was to keep him comfortable at home and being able to enjoy things. And for about a month and a half, he was able to do that. He was able to, he still had like the bags, the catheter, and all of that. And we had home hospice set up to come and help manage the pain. But on a daily basis, he was good. We have some really good memories during that time. But again, around Christmas, I could sense something wasn't going well. And sure enough, that's when the chemo stopped working. So we stopped chemo. We stopped going to clinic every week for chemo. And we did have a scan confirm that the tumor was growing again. And by January, it was starting to come out of his bottom. So diaper changes, as you can imagine, were horrendous. He was in constant pain. His pain medicine was increased continuously from that point on, and we pretty much knew it was just a matter of time. We had hospice visiting us regularly, daily at that point. The nurse came every day to check his pain pump, and he was just declining. You could tell he was losing weight. He just wasn't himself. I mean, that was just not my son. He still smiled and loved his sister, and she made him laugh. And we just tried to be together as a family as much as we could. And then finally, the hospice could no longer manage his pain. I mean, it was that intense that even the hospice team couldn't handle it. So we had no choice but to send him back to the hospital by ambulance. And he couldn't even sit on his bottom. He had to lie down on his stomach. But we transferred him back to the hospital to help manage his pain. They struggled to manage his pain. They called him the Superhuman Warrior because they had never seen a child his size on adult doses of pain medications and still needing more and still living. I mean, they were just shocked. They were all consulting with everybody, each other in the hospital. They were consulting with other hospitals. They couldn't understand how he could be like on that high dose of pain medication. But he was transferred to the hospital the end of January. And less than a week later, he passed away at the hospital. And I won't go into too much about that because it's just, I've shared some things on my social media related to that. I just, for this purpose, I'll refrain from going into that. But I did want to share a little bit about his love for music, because that was Justin. Justin was music. And he brought music everywhere he went. He brought it to the hospital. He was the only patient on the hem-onc floor that we pushed him in his stroller when he was getting his infusions, and we had his speaker playing all his music, and he was the only child on the floor that listened to music continuously. Even some of the nurses made playlists because of him, and every time they had him for a patient, he would ask to go to the nurses' station. We would push him to the nurses' station. He would listen to music with the nurses and the doctors. He loved all kinds of music, but he had his favorites, and he loved to dance, and he loved to perform. And I feel like he felt it in his soul. It was just, he felt it here. I mean, it's something you can't explain. He felt it. But we were really surprised that the hospital where he was treated didn't have a music therapy program. I mean, they had every other type of program, art therapy and pet therapy, and wonderful, wonderful resources. But we thought, why don't they have a music therapy program? So we knew when Justin passed away, my husband and I knew that is something we wanted to make sure that we did, that we wanted to start that music therapy program there in Justin's memory, but for all the kids that love it so much, because music brings people together. Music brings joy. It's comforting. For some people, it's everything. And so we met with the foundation at the hospital, probably a month after Justin passed away, just to start the conversation. And it was always our goal. And my husband and I did start our own foundation. It's a 501c3, officially in June of 2020. So Justin passed away February 5th of 2019. And we started working on, just kind of slowly putting the wheels in motion for the music therapy program within a month. And then we were very fortunate to have very generous donations toward the music therapy program. So they do have a program now in place. It's officially started at Inova, and it's in its infancy. So it's part-time right now, and our goal is to grow it and sustain it. So our foundation is called Justin's Love, and we haven't promoted it yet. We haven't marketed it yet. The website is almost complete. That's been kind of a labor of love, but it's official. We are official, and people can donate to it. And again, the donations that we receive, the main focus is the music therapy program. But of course, we also, in addition to that, want to support families, children, and families currently going through treatment who need some extra support, financial or otherwise. We have helped a few families locally, and we'll continue to do as much as we can. We are hoping to have some fundraisers and events. And once it's a little bit further along with the website, I'll make sure I market it a little bit more on social media. But I think that's something that we felt very passionate about, and that includes advocating and educating the masses about childhood cancer. that it's not just the St. Jude's commercials that people see. We want people to really understand. And, I know that this platform is just so instrumental in that. So we want to be a part of that. We want to partner with other advocates, and, take the time to grieve too, because it's important. We have another child to care for. We have to care for ourselves too. But it's important for us to make sure that, Justin, people know that Justin lived. He was only 2.5 when he passed away. And when they have such short lives like that, it's all the more reason for us as parents to want to carry on for them, be their voice, continue what they started here, because they did live, they did exist, and they deserve to be recognized like all other children, all the other living children who are here and healthy. Our children who had to go on way too early, they deserve to be remembered. And that's why I do what I do, no matter how hard it is, every single day, no matter how tough the conversations are with people. And I'm just very grateful for the amazing childhood cancer community that I've gotten to be a part of. And I've made some wonderful friendships, and I can't imagine going through any of this without some of those people. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for this opportunity, and trying to think, I think that's the best I could do for Justin right now.
Well, Melis, you did amazing, really. And just hearing his story, honestly, I mean, it's these stories that I tell people, they're heartbreaking yet beautiful stories, or beautiful yet heartbreaking, whichever way you want to put it. And just what you were talking about right now at the end is, it's prior to the doctors telling us your child has cancer, we had zero clue what childhood cancer was about. Maybe we did watch those St. Jude commercials. Maybe somebody that we knew had a child with cancer. But like you said, when your child is born, never in a million years do you ever think my child's gonna have cancer. And so when they tell you, it's life-changing. And we were talking about it a little bit off camera right now, how life-changing it is. Once your child is diagnosed, you have to go 100% in and be there and fight with your child, and this is again the various reasons why I wanted this platform. Again, is when I was going through it myself, I wanted to look at YouTube videos. I wanted to look at websites to see, hey, there's other people that have gone through this. I want to be able to connect with these people. And once we became a part of this community, and I tell people, we became a part of a family that we did not want to be a part of. And I always say, and that's the slogan for my nonprofit is, we're broken, but we're broken together. It's a beautiful community that we're a part of, that none of us wanted to be here, but we're here. And we're making the best of it. And just like we get to meet amazing people, great people, and people grieve differently. There's a lot of parents, me personally, it took me over a year to even share my story. And there's people that right away, they get on the horse and they start doing things for to be an advocate. But you're right, our children did exist. Our children were here, and as time passes, and one of the things is, when we're battling and we're in the hospital, we get support, right? We get all these nonprofit organizations, we get all this, we get all the attention. But then once your child passes, then that's when reality kicks in. And for most of the parents, or if not all the parents, it starts fading away. And as time keeps going, people are forgetting that. people are forgetting that your child existed. So it's on us to continue that. And the way I see it is, for these children that have passed, for Warrior Justin, for Mia, for all these thousands of children that have passed, they started something for us. They started a ministry for us. They started a big task for us to follow. And people like you and just doing and answering God's call, to me, is just amazing. And I've shared this, if you've seen my last couple of episodes, and people that are watching it, they know what I'm about to say next, but I don't care, I'll still say it. I believe in my heart that this generation of cancer parents, whether your child was already called home, whether your child is still fighting, or whether they survived, I just know in my heart that we're going to make a difference somehow. You were talking about the low funding. Yes, for all our viewers, 4%, 4 pennies, that's all that childhood cancer gets. 4 pennies on the dollar, that's what childhood cancer gets. That's why we get to this, to where doctors say we can't do anything more. We
Right.
can't do anything else. There's nothing else we can do, because the research only allows for it to plateau at a certain part, and it can't go beyond that. And it's
Right.
unfortunate, but we have to do something, and we are doing something. And that's what our passion behind everything that we do, that's where it comes from. Because Melis told me this a little bit before we started recording, but we don't want another child to go through this. We don't want another parent to go through this. Let me tell you something. You might see our social medias, you might see us smiling right now, but once this camera's off, once social media, once you have logged off, we live nightmares. We live bad nights. We live bad days. And as we were talking about earlier, sometimes we don't live. Sometimes we're just surviving. And once we get to the end of the day, we're like, okay, we survived today. That in itself, for grieving parents, is a victory. Getting through the whole day is a victory. And just whatever, what Melis was saying. And so just a couple of things that I do want to ask you. You did say that, your nonprofit is, in the beginning stages. Honestly, I think that's awesome. But do you have an area now where people can donate? We do have a lot of generous, viewers that come in and ask questions. So you said that there's no website. So how can people get a hold of you? And I think this music therapy program is amazing. The hospital that we were at had it. And just to be able to have these children bang on some drums, play some keyboards, or do anything that takes their focus away for a while, and saying, hey, I'm here and I'm having fun. I'm being a child, I'm having fun. So how can someone get a hold of you or your foundation to be able to donate?
Thank you. That's a great question. And our hope is that our website will be live within the next month or so. So that is our goal. We're working through that. But the link, the donation link, is live. And that is something I am happy to share. I can share offline with you, Joelle, if we want to put it somewhere, if people are interested. And then anyone could also email me directly for some more information. I'm happy to answer any questions in the meantime, because I know that the website will, of course, offer so much more information. But until then, if people are interested, which we would be so grateful, I'm happy to answer any questions through my direct email, or I can share that link, the donation link, directly with you. And share with whomever else is interested.
Yes, definitely. So for all our viewers, if you're interested in donating, if God has blessed you and you want to be a blessing to other people, just check the description here below, and you're going to have the email, and we're going to have the direct link to where you can donate. And once the website is up, Melis, we would be more than happy to share in all our social media platforms, so people can go into the website and read a little bit more about Justin, and read about a little bit more of the passion behind all of this and your mission. The mission statements, I know for 501c3s you got to have a mission statement.
Yes.
But for things that are like this, trust me, the mission statement really hits home, because it's what you're doing and the passion and everything behind it. So once that website is up, again, we'll be more than happy to. Whatever we can do to help you out, and however we can collab, I would be more than happy to. So
Thank
If
you.
you've seen my episodes, I do have two questions that I ask every single parent. Everybody has great advice. Some people, do different things. But the two questions that I would ask you, Melis, is what advice would you give to other parents that are going through the same that we are going through, or are in the same stage that we are? And the second question is, what advice would you give to parents that have healthy children?
Sure. To answer your first question, it's interesting because recently I wrote a letter to newly grieving parents. I was part of a project where a friend of mine asked a few of us bereaved parents to write letters to newly grieving parents, just sort of as like, not so much advice, but just mainly a comfort, so that you're not alone. Because I think when your child first passes, at least for me, the first year was just sort of getting out of that fog, and that it's real, but you don't. And so it was a very difficult realization. But like you had mentioned, Joelle, we all grieve differently. We all go through, it's just very fluid. It's very up and down. It's just, there's not really a way of knowing what each day is going to hold. But this project was great, I thought, because it is letters written to newly grieving parents from different perspectives, all from bereaved parents, and it's housed in one, almost like a booklet. And the purpose is to be used as a resource for grieving parents. So it will be distributed in some hospice centers and really wherever. I mean, I have access to it since I participated, so I'm happy to share that resource with whoever needs it. I plan to do that. It's new, we just finished it, so it's brand new, so I haven't really said much about it, but I'll take this opportunity to mention it since it's applicable. But it is a really great resource, because if anything, you walk away feeling you're not alone. And when Justin first passed away, I felt very alone. I mean, here I have my husband, and I'm sure he felt alone too. And you're surrounded by, you could be in a crowded room and you just feel so alone. You just feel like the world has stopped. Your world has stopped, but the world around you has not. And so it's really important, I think, to connect with people who share some of that early on and start kind of developing a support system, because it can be lonely. I mean, it can truly be, if you allow it, it can consume you, that loneliness. So it's really important. I feel what benefited me is just to really grasp on to some support that I felt there was that connection. And I'm grateful that I had some grief counseling. I'm going to continue. I took a break. I'm going to go back to it, but we had some grief counseling for 2 years straight, and that saved me. That saved me because it was a release. It was a specific time and place to get that out. So I would just say those things, just part of taking care of you. Don't forget you, because you have to be able to, sit in your grief. You have to be able to sit with it. That's the other thing I think is important. Is for a while I was pushing it away, and it was coming back even harder for me. It was just sort of, I would push it away and then it would just hit me and it would be even worse. So I learned that I have to sit in it when it hits me, and I have to sit in it and just take it and move through it. And other than that, just go slow. Just go slow. Second question was for what I would say to parents with healthy children. Knowing what I know now, and this is what Joelle and I have talked about earlier and what we'll probably continue to talk about, in how passionate we are towards like the advocacy component of all of this is get involved. Get involved. If you have a child and you're blessed to have healthy children, don't turn your head the other way. Don't turn your head the other way because it's too uncomfortable to look at these images, too uncomfortable to even think about. I know you don't want to think about your child getting sick. Nobody does. But the reality is that it could happen to you, and it could happen to anybody. It does not discriminate. I always say that there are so many things in this world that we don't have control over, okay? There are so many bad things that happen that we can try and do our part to help prevent, but the bottom line is they're gonna happen. Childhood cancer should not be one of those things. It is absolutely preventable. It is absolutely treatable. We could save lives. Justin and Mia should be here. They should be here. They could have been here still if treatments were better, if we were further along in childhood cancer as a whole. And in 2022, there is no reason our children should be dying of cancer. There is absolutely no reason. So I say to any parent with a healthy child, get involved, because this could be you. And if you help us, I fully agree with Joel. I think we are a generation that is part of a movement, and we can make a difference. And that is what we want to do. We want to make a difference, but we need everybody to care. Not just if your child is sick. We need you to care if your child is healthy. We need help. And that's what I would say to any parent with a healthy child.
Yeah, great advice. We need help. And the way that you can start helping is by being educated on this,
Yes.
on being aware and knowing that it exists. And just like you're saying on your previous question, is you tend to push things away, and it is uncomfortable. Trust me, it was uncomfortable when I would see commercials of bald kids walking down the hallway holding an IV pole. It was uncomfortable for me. And I can tell you that I'm probably as guilty to change the channel, but there I was being that parent walking with a bald child holding an IV pole. So it doesn't discriminate, like Melis was saying. It can happen to anyone. And we were not cancer parents until they told us your child has cancer. At that point, as I was mentioning earlier, our world changed. And that's why we're here. And that's why we're so passionate. And just like she was saying, Justin and Mia should be here, but they're not. It was God's will. And this had to happen, but we are going to be that voice, and we are going to continue to be that voice for those that cannot speak. Melis, thank you so much for the advice that you gave me, that you gave our viewers. Any last words before we finish?
No, I just really appreciate the opportunity. It has been so nice talking with you. This is our first conversation, actually. So it's been really lovely. And I appreciate the opportunity not only to share about Justin, of course, but just to talk about the importance of educating ourselves, one another, and advocating for childhood cancer. Any opportunity there is to be involved in that, I'm very appreciative. So thank you.
Thank you. And like you said, any opportunity of shining gold anywhere we go, we're going to take that opportunity and run with it. So to our viewers, once again, in the description here of the video, you are going to have her email and the direct link to where you can donate. And as I mentioned, also, if God has blessed you and you want to be a blessing to someone, feel free to reach out to her, email her, ask her. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to her, and she would be more than happy to answer those questions. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in this week. This is who we are. We're the Gold Corner. We're a broken family, but we're broken together. Pray for your family. Pray for your children. Pray for this nation. And once again, broken, but broken together. Remember to live each day to its fullest because tomorrow's not promised. And just hold on a little while longer because we're almost home. God bless you, and we'll see you next time.